Looking at the Japanese meta, Shoutmon Crossheart has dominated the top tables since its arrival in BT10. Of course, this means that people over here in the English meta are already talking up the possibility of entering a tier 0 format, especially since Bandai did not limit or ban any of the cards in the deck. However, in my personal testing and just from scoping out the general consensus on the deck from other English players testing out in BT10, Shoutmon Cross is not the big boogeyman of the format that some people are hyping it up to be. Although the deck can feel a bit unfair if it pops off, it does have some very clearly defined weaknesses that we can take advantage of in order to consistently win against the deck. Let's get into it. Alongside the introduction of BT10 comes the Ragnarlordmon and Jesmon starter decks, which each include either Chikurimon or Solarmon. Alongside the previously released Psychmon, this trio of floodgates is a very powerful, proactive answer to cross decks. Locking the opponent out of their cheap cross 4 and cross 5 plays really slows the deck down and prevents them from going for the cross 4 rushdown, which is the win condition of that deck. Do note that Cross has its own in-engine answers to these cards such as BT5 Starmons, Darulomon, Crimson Blaze, Sunrise Buster, and Fireball are all really good answers to these rookies. However, a well-timed floodgate could slow them down regardless, as forcing your opponent to spend that 2 to 5 memory in order to wipe out your level 3 could buy you that extra turn you need in order to swing the game in your favor. However, do note that these cards affect both players, so if you have your own Psychmon out on the board, it could prevent you from going from your own crossplay or from going for a devastating Death Xmon play. But I still think that these cards are worthwhile inclusions regardless if you are in red, black, or purple. They're definitely no-brainers at anywhere from 2 to 4 copies, and that should be enough to gain you a significant advantage in the matchup. Although I hate to say it, the premier secret rare from the BT9 meta continues to be a menace in the BT10 meta, meaning those of you who don't already have your copies of the card should consider picking up a couple just so you don't fall behind the curve. Due to the large amount of tamers in the Shoutmon Crossheart deck, Death Xmon can often come out for very low cost or mostly even 0 memory cost in the majority of situations. And it will also always delete your opponent's entire board, as the Crossheart deck is entirely built around level 3s and level 4s. The only level 5 in the deck, Shoutmon Cross 5, will of course get de-digivolved to a level 4 and then subsequently deleted anyways. In fact, the only non-level 4 or 5 Digimon that is in the Crossheart deck is Death Xmon itself, as the Crossheart deck does run its own pair of copies in order to answer the mirror match. What this means is that oftentimes it can devolve into a sort of Death X stare down, but I still think that the card has a huge merit in the matchup, if only for that very low cost board wipe, and also being a large 15,000 body that will destroy cross 4 on security check, which is very, very important, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the video. But if you don't already have your copies, definitely pick them up, as Death Ox will definitely swing the matchup in your favor. Because Crossheart is so reliant on tamers in order to activate their save mechanic, as well as Taiki being such a key card for enabling the cross 4 rushdown, being able to remove their tamers is a very powerful ability. Of course, when we talk about Tamer Control, the card that immediately comes to mind is Black War Greymon, who can delete up to 2 of Cross's 3 cost tamers on Digivolve. Black War Grey players can also choose to supplement their strategy by including a copy or 2 of BT9 Megadramon, who when digivolving can delete a 3-cost Digimon or Tamer, and it also has the same effect as a 1 attacking inheritable, meaning that you can get this effect off every turn as long as you can keep attacking with your level 6. If you want to triple down on the Tamer deletion effect, you can then further digivolve your Black War Greymon into an Omnimon Sword Defeat, who has the on digivolve effect to delete yet another Tamer. Defeat is also a good choice for decks that run purple level 6s like Minerva Loop, Security Control, or Mastamon. Purple decks can also choose to utilize Lucemon Chaos Mode for some more Tamer deletion effects, or Neo Devimon, which can be useful both in the early game as a way to deter Cross from spamming out their Tamers with that gain 3 memory whenever your opponent plays a Tamer effect, or it can also be useful later on in the game with its inheritable, which is whenever your opponent suspends one of their Tamers, you can gain a memory. This of course chokes out the Cross players from using their Taikis, Zenjiros, and Akiras, as they don't want to lose that 1 memory, as it's not a once per turn effect, so that can really stifle their draw power, memory gain, and attacking engines. Outside of purple and black decks, the only other colors that have access to Tamer Control effects are blue and green. Blue players can choose to tech in a couple Jellymons and Starling Thunders, as Starling Thunder will allow you to bounce a Tamer back to your opponent's hand, and that will subsequently trash all the cross materials it had underneath that Tamer, preventing your opponent from using them for a future cross play. Green players have access to Samadhi Santi and Argomon level 6. Both of these cards can suspend a Tamer and prevent it from restanding itself, which means that the opponent will not be able to use its effect, as all of Cross's engine Tamers require suspending themselves in order to activate. Now, just as a general note, you should always try to target their red Tamers for deletion effects, as this can make it a lot more difficult for them to activate their key option cards like Sunrise Buster, Fireball, and Crimson Blaze. Shoutmon Cross's main gameplay loop requires them to survive an attack with Shoutmon Cross 4, who then uses its end of attack effect to restand their Taiki and place all of its cross materials underneath it, allowing for another Cross 4 to come down after and swing again, repeat ad nauseum until they either run out of Cross 4s or they win the game. If you can prevent that end of attack effect from triggering, you can't effectively cut the legs out from under the Cross Heart deck. Remember that Cross 4 swings for 8k DP, meaning that big blockers can effectively counter this strategy. When we talk about big blockers, we of course have to go back to Blackwood Greymon, whose level 4 Greymon inheritable grants blocker to all of its higher level Digimon, all of which can be 8k DP or more. We also have to look at Magnamon in Armor Rush, who can easily boost itself past 8k DP with its own effect, and also Magnamon X, which can use its redirect effect to act as a pseudo blocker and prevent Crossheart from attacking. Another blocker worth mentioning is Rebellymon. This is a card that's been mostly forgotten about, but it does have blocker and retaliation, which can again delete the Cross 4 before it gets its end of attack effect off. And I want to give an honorable mention to my favorite blocker of this set, Leomon. Leomon's on deletion effect gains you 2 memory and allows you to draw a card. So even though it will die to the Cross 4, it will then gain you the 2 memory, which will oftentimes pass the turn right back over to you, or at least prevent your opponent from going for another Cross 4 play, as they do have to spend 1 memory in order to play the Cross 4 even with full cross materials. Even if your deck doesn't have access to big or unique effect blockers, a simple 5k vanilla blocker can be enough to save you from losing the game, as even though Shoutmon Cross 4 and Cross 5 have access to piercing thanks to Ballistamon's inheritable, remember that you cannot lose the game off of a piercing check. So if you're at 0 security, it can oftentimes be the correct play to just slam out or somehow find a way to put a blocker out on your board to prevent your opponent from attacking you directly to finish the game. If you absolutely cannot find room for a blocker in your deck, or maybe your archetype doesn't have access to a particularly good blocker, then just consider adding in some security bombs to your deck that can prevent the Cross 4 from surviving a security check. For this purposes, Digimon with 10k DP or more are also effective, as you have to remember that the Darulamon inheritable reduces your security Digimon's DP by 2,000, meaning that Shoutmon Cross 4 effectively swings for 10,000 into security. And also remember that the Darulamon effect does stack, which means each subsequent Cross 4 is effectively 2000 DP stronger than the last. So definitely keep that in mind. Throw some big Digimon in your deck, throw some security bombs in your deck if you really can't fit any sort of blocker. But I still think that decks that have access to big blockers or unique effect blockers like Rebellymon or Leomon are going to be really good options into the Crossheart deck. If you look at a Crossheart deck for the first time, you may be wondering how it actually functions as a 4-color deck. That probably means you didn't read the text that allows them all to digivolve over each other. But regardless, the multicolor makeup of the deck grants it some interesting advantages and disadvantages. For advantages, we of course have to talk about all the cool options the deck is capable of running, including of course Sunrise Buster, Crimson Blaze, Fireball. They can even go into green options like Grandisol or Samadhi Santi, and they do run a yellow egg, which gives them easy access to cards like maybe even Reinforced Memory Boost. You aren't really going to see anything outside of those red options, but you do have to consider that they might be playing them. But this also means that they can often run into scenarios where they are missing a color source or a key piece in order to run their deck efficiently. So what you want to be able to do is read when they're missing a piece and be able to capitalize accordingly. So for example, although their egg is yellow, all their rookies are going to be either red or black. They do run the yellow Starmons as well, but for the most part you are going to be seeing that Shoutmon or Sparrowmon, which is a beat stick, coming out of the raising area. So if the cross player isn't careful, they could lock themselves out of that yellow source that they need in order to activate a card like Sunrise Buster. Accordingly, because they don't run a red egg, they are reliant on either seeing that red Shoutmon level 3 or one of the red Tamers in order to have a red source in order to activate any of their red options, which they do run multiple ofs with the aforementioned Sunrise Buster, Crimson Blaze, and Fireball. And then also consider that if they don't see that level 3 Shoutmon, their cross plays aren't actually going to have Rush, as the Rush effect is an inheritable of the Shoutmon and isn't actually inherent to the cross 4 or cross 5 themselves. So be just really aware of what pieces they're missing, what color sources they have out on their board, especially when they're trying to activate one of those dual color options. Make sure they have both colors available to them. You don't want to get soft cheated that way, because even though it might not be intentional because they're just so used to being able to activate Sunrise Buster anyways, it could slip through the cracks and you may lose the game regardless because of that. So just keep that in mind, especially if they don't have a red color source on their board. That could be your opportunity to really establish your own board presence, as all of their removal spells are in red. So that means if they don't have it, you can feel a little bit safer committing to the board and being able to swing aggressively and win the game that way. Alright guys, and there you have it, 5 quick tips on how to improve your Shoutmon crossart matchup. Like I said at the beginning of the video, although the deck is very strong and can definitely be scary, it's not as powerful as Japanese meta or Japanese results made it out to be. We're definitely not going to be entering a tier 0 format or anything close to that. So if you want to go ahead and build crossart yourself, feel free, or if you want to really just build a counter cross deck, go ahead. However, I don't think it's going to be necessary to run like either one of those two options. Feel free to play whatever deck you want to play and just have fun, you know, because after all, if BT9 meta taught us anything, it's that anything can win as long as your build is strong, your play is strong, and you have a little bit of luck on your side. All right, guys, it's all about having fun anyways. So see you guys in the next video, and GG's.